exploration. Today, we're going to be looking at the Sensing Sand interactive exhibit. And we have an agenda that we're going to follow on the next slide. So the goal of these exhibits is to promote family engagement, exploration, and play, while giving children and their caregivers opportunities to explore ideas in science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So I also want to remind you that there is a shared drive for all participants, and we have an exhibit guide provided for the Sensing Sand interactive exhibit. The next slide up here. Here we go. Here's our agenda. I won't take as much time for our welcome, but we'll do an introduction, an exhibit setup. So you can ask any questions that you may have about setup. We'll have some play time, and our participants online will be able to hopefully watch and observe what's happening here at the center. And then a discussion and Q&A for any other questions or support that you may need to implement this at your own sites with your own participants. So I think that's about it for a welcome. I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Eli, who's online.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me and see me pretty well?
Yes.
Great, thanks so much. Hey, thanks so much for coming and joining this. Yeah, it's been such a pleasure to be designing and developing and implementing this exhibit. And I'm really excited to share this with you all. So just for a moment, before we kind of dive into this big wall of text, I want to invite everybody to take their hands off of their keyboards and their mice just for one moment, and maybe rest your hands on your lap, close your eyes if you'd like to, if that feels comfortable. Take a deep breath and feel the sense of gravity bringing your hands to rest wherever they are. And start to feel into the sense of contact of your hands on whatever they're resting on. And it might help to find a very slow, gradual motion with your hands, moving them just a centimeter or an inch, maybe in a circle, and feeling into where is the sensation. Where do you feel it most strongly? And what does that sensation feel like? Doesn't even have to be words, just feeling a sense of what it is that we're touching and how that is in relationship to our hands. Is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Do you want it to stop? Do you want to explore something else? Letting your hands kind of guide the experience, move wherever they want to go. And you can keep doing that as much as you'd like. It's a wonderful little grounding practice. And if you would like to open your eyes, you can open your eyes. And if not, feel free to stay in that space. So that was sort of this guiding experience that was sort of the motivation for a lot of this development of this exhibit. So Sensing Sand is as you can guess, it's a very tactile exhibit focusing very much on both our sense of tactility and the haptic qualities of our hands in relationship to the world. And it's collaborative. So we are building and sensing and storytelling in relationship with each other. Our target audience was 2 to 7-year-olds with their caregivers. And the focus here is very much on playful, happy learning without any sense of there being a right or a wrong way to play, to explore, to learn, to create, and to storytell. What this exhibit is really focusing on is moving away from a more conceptual way of relating to ourselves, relating to our experiences, and relating to our emotions, and moving into a more of an embodied, felt experience of those things. So often we are very dependent on language in order to describe our experience, describe what we're thinking, what we're seeing, what we're feeling. And this play space is really encouraging us to move closer to that direct felt experience that actually comes before language. And in that space, it's very non-judgmental, it's very supportive, very accommodating, and very freeing. There's a lot of creativity there. A big source of inspiration here in this exhibit is our natural world, and dissolving the barriers between what we feel and what we touch and what we engage with and the world around us. And so moving away from this sense of, there is me, and then there's this world, and there's this whole barrier between us, and moving into that barrier, moving into that sense of relationality between us and the natural world. And in this way, we start to see how much our own experience is inseparable from our environment, inseparable from the natural world, inseparable from each other. And we start to really tune into this quite clear, distinct, non-metaphysical sense of being interconnected, where what happens to me affects you and vice versa. And the focus of this is on that, the nexus of the hands, which is really one of the main points of relationality in the world. And so in all of this, can kind of summarize this in one line, where the sand play, sensing sand play, becomes an extension of how we think and how we feel. So what stories are we able to tell and make sense of through our relationship with the sand, through playing with the sand? And what does our playing with the sand reveal to us about ourselves, about our own unfolding experience? And in all of that, dissolving this sense of hierarchy between, the young folks and their caregivers, who is the adult, who is the child, who is the one who says, this is how something should be done. In this space of sand play, there is no right or wrong way to do this. And so again, it becomes very freeing and very empowering for young people as well, but also very empowering for adults. A lot of experiences where the sense of rigidity of, is this right? Is this wrong? I feel uncomfortable. It's unclear. All of that sort of falls away in this free open space of sand play. So I'm really excited to present this. We're going to be going into some specifics about the exhibit itself. I know this was all quite abstract without seeing what the exhibit actually looks like, but I just hope that this sets a backdrop for what this exhibit is and what this work is intended to evoke and to welcome you in as an invitation. So thank you so much for coming, and yeah, gonna hand it off, I think. Who's up next?
Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Elin Anderson. I'm one of the PK through 12 coordinators here at the Ames Center. It's nice to see some familiar faces and so many virtual attendants online. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the the setup for the sensing sand exhibit. And I think the link that was put in the chat initially was a link to light and shadow. I think that's been corrected, but we'll make sure you get the link to the sensing sand exhibit folder, which has the guide and the posters that we have for the exhibit and some other resources for you. So if you have your guide in front of you, or if you're able to access it online, these 2 pages in the guide really talk about thinking about your space that you're going to use for the exhibit and the materials that you're going to use. So when you're thinking about setting up the sensing sand exhibit, think about your environment, your setting. You want to have your exhibit set up in an area that's going to be visible for families to see. So possibly in a high traffic area, but also needs to be out of the way, so it doesn't interfere with your flow of traffic. You want to have space for at least 3 children to participate in the activity at one time. So think about the table that you might use, and an area for the materials that you would use with the sensing sand. You can also have this exhibit set up in an outdoor area too. If your site has an outdoor area, that would be a good area to set up a sensing sand table. That would be a possibility too. You just want to think about an area that might provide some protection from the weather. I know here in our valley, we're heading into the summer months and it gets very hot. So children might be more apt to play with the sensing sand if it's in a shaded area. And also you want to think about protection from the elements and possibly other like outdoor debris or things, bugs. So you might want to think about something that you could use to cover it when it's not in use, to keep the sand or whatever material you're going to use with it. So it is one of those exhibits that can be used outside or inside. So that's thinking about your environment where you're going to set it up, but you also need to think about what kind of material you would like children to engage with, because this exhibit is called Sensing Sand, but there are a few types of materials that you can use with the students based on what fits your needs the best. That still allow children to engage in a way that provides for self-expression and creativity. But again, thinking about your environment may be more fitting for the age range, or maybe you're thinking about like cost or just other things that you might be thinking about. So you can use sand or clay. Some types of sand are kinetic sand, which is available through many locations. The one we found that works the best is this National Geographic play sand. And all of the resources that we curated and found work the best are located on the resource page on page 12 in the guide. But we found that to be the best type of kinetic sand. It's nice because it's not colored. It's just a nice natural looking material. And it's hypoallergenic and not toxic, so it's very safe. But you can also use regular sand. So maybe your outdoor area has a sand play area. So this guide might help you just think about how you might use that area in a little bit different way, or with adding some more material. And also regular sand is easily accessible at a variety of different nurseries, like Home Depot or Lowe's, so home improvement areas. You can also use non-drying modeling clay is another option for having students engage in the sensing sand activities. And you can also use natural clay is another material that you can have children explore. It is, you know, something that is, again, natural and would be an interesting material for students to feel and sense. But with natural clay, you do need to make sure you have some place to, or some way to store it, because it can dry out fairly quickly. But natural clay is also another option. So, and on page 4, we talk about the different sensory tools, or sorry, sensory tables. So again, a lot of you may already have a sensory table at your site that you use, which is fine to use for this exhibit. There's an example of a typical sensory table that you might find. But you can also just use, we found that like low storage bins work well, or low plastic trays. Something that, you know, is accessible and easy for students to access, but also keeps the material in. So it's nice if it has a ledge around. And then tools and toys for children to engage with. You might have some materials at your site already, but you can think about collecting a wide variety of different toys and tools for students to use. This is really an opportunity for you and your peers at your site to be really creative and think about maybe a possible theme you want to explore. Maybe at some time you want to have just all kitchen tools available for students to explore in the sand. Or maybe another week you have all natural items. So maybe you gather, or you can have students help gather sticks and leaves and rocks and pine cones to use in the sand. Or maybe you have little items in a play area that might be fun to explore, like little animal figurines for students to use. So the possibilities are endless. Maybe you want to have all types of toys that roll and see how they roll in the sand. So really, it's just what you have on hand and what you think children would find engaging. You can also, and we will talk about this when we start to explore, you can also do a lot of connection to children's literature. So you may find some materials that connect with a certain children's book that you're using with the sand. That might be another way for students to connect. So just, you know, collecting items and making sure you have a way to store them so they're accessible for students to use. Again, when we were experimenting and trying different things, we did try to make our own kinetic sand. which was a fun process. We do have some tips for that in the section on the bottom of page 4. We do find that, I mean, again, the one that we found through National Geographic seems to be the best when you're looking for recipes for kinetic sand. And that one was actually better than anything we could make. When you're looking for recipes for kinetic sand, you just want to make sure that you know, they don't have a lot of little particles or things that might be toxic for children to possibly ingest. Yeah. That's it. Does anybody have any questions? Are there any questions in the chat? Right. And so now, again, now that you're thinking about your environment, the materials you might use, we also want to encourage you to experience the exhibit as a learner. So that's what we're going to do next. So I'm going to hand it over to Alejandra.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Alejandra. I remember many of your faces from before. So we're gonna, in a moment, we're gonna spend some time like we usually do, playing with some of the materials. And for those of you who are online, if you just so happen to have some kinetic sand by your desk, or some Play-Doh even nearby, I invite you to grab that so that you can play along with us as well. Or even some regular sand could work too, if you have just so happen to have any of that wherever it is that you are joining us from. So similar to how Elin and Eli already talked about, what we really want to do today is we want to do really two things. We want to explore the material, right? And then we also want to explore our emotions through the material, right? We want to connect with our emotions through the material, or, you know, explore the emotions of others or other characters in books, right? Through the material. Like Eli already said, the focus today really isn't necessarily to create something very specific, right? As adults, we often want to create something very specific with the material. But what we really want to do, especially with young children, is we really want to focus on the process of exploring the materials, and then connecting with our emotions through that process, okay? So I definitely want you guys to keep that in mind today. So we're just gonna start off just exploring. And so over here on this table, we have some trays of kinetic sand, with some bins of tools that you can use to explore the sand, to change the sand, to make prints in the sand, to mold the sand. Over here, we have some non-dry modeling clay. So like Elin said, the guide really is focused on sand, but there are other materials you can use. So the non-dry modeling clay is great because it's moldable and it doesn't dry out. So you can leave it out for a long time. Unlike Play-Doh, it'll dry up if you don't put it away. And then there's some tools in here as well that you can also use in your exploration of the material. I encourage you to start off just using your hands, right? Once we start using tools, that sensory part, of that tactile part of feeling the material, we kind of start to move away from feeling it in our hands. So as you guys go and explore the material, I invite you to just start thinking about what the material feels like, right? Which you can see in the guide here. There's like a visual here. How does the sand feel, right? So think about what it feels like. This pink visual right here, how can you change it? You change the sand with your hands, right? Like what is it that you are doing to change it with your hands? And then connecting with our feelings, how does the sand make you feel, right? So as you're exploring, you you can think about all those 3 prompts. And you can have these prompts up as well in your exhibit. As well, and you'll notice actually before you go play that these prompts have language on there, right? There's vocabulary there. There's words connected to how the sand feels. There's words there, verbs essentially, right, to describe how you're changing the sand, pulling, stretching, pinching, and so on. And then some feeling words as well, connected to that can help you describe how the sand makes you feel. So while this exploration is very child, driven, that component of the language, right, that the adult plays a key role in that, in supporting that language development during that exploration. And those are some examples of some language, some words that can come up during that exploration. So we have these 2 tables here. Why don't we have 4 of you start with the kinetic sand, 4 of you can start with the modeling clay. You can spend a few minutes there. You can talk to your neighbor about what it feels like, how you're changing it, all the different words that are coming up during your exploration, how it's making you feel. And then definitely I invite you to switch at some point so that you can just, you don't have to spend a whole lot of time at that other table, but so that you can just get a sense of what that material feels like. So let's take a few minutes. Go for it.
It feels like a rubber. I don't know, it's. Semi-dry tortilla. Yeah.
Yeah. You mean the training session?
How long, does it say how long it does? And like if we were to put it in a century table, would that? Yeah, I think this is the non.
That's right.
Yeah.
If it's like with candle wax mixed in it, then I think it would, I think it would stay tangible for a very long time. Yeah.
And yeah, the
inner
it's something to think about. Yeah.
Translated to a Spanish lab also helps.
Very observant. I think when I was a child, I put a lot of things in my mouth too, so. Feel free to use,
Are you at the beach?
The skin of it. Something.
Yes.
It should that like thinking sensation.
Yeah.
a good arthritis tool. I don't have arthritis yet, but maybe this will prevent it.
She will be.
I'm done with my 2nd year.
This is,
Oh.
yeah, we're done with the.
Okay, so we definitely want to use a pen or something when we press it.
It does, yeah, it does like
I'm thinking of doing, yeah.
It's good. It's just-
But now that I'm like sticking it.
It's rolling, it's not very.
Yeah.
Maybe it's real.
I'm not.
If I was a child, this is gonna break and just me on.
Yeah, and you know what, like in the block area, the cylinder blocks.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Those would work.
Yeah, but like how.
Oh, yeah, cause I
Oh, yeah,
really
you
have
would.
a rolling pin.
Yeah,
So it feels good to cut in.
yeah.
Yeah. Reading Spanish. See, that's what, I can't find any good books. And like, I'm not interested in like, foreign books. No offense.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Because I don't
They
have-
knew that was their expectation.
Well, like fantasy.
There's some in Spanish.
Oh, yeah, I just don't know how to find them.
I'm gonna take one of you. Yeah.
Just one. Some of these.
Over here.
I do wanna invest in some of them. There we go.
Some other tools. But this one might be a little easier to cut into, to play with. And this is fun too.
Thank you.
And like, illustration.
Yeah, that's a beautiful book. It's a great book. If you are choosing to use some kind of clay, whether it's non-dry modeling clay or like that natural clay, that a lot of the art teachers use, that's a good book to connect with. This particular page has some like, some words there connected to like, how do you change a stretch? Like what can you do with your hands? Well, I can stretch it, I can smooth it, I can roll it.
And then we can extend it to these. We were fine motor, stretching, rolling and.
Totally. It's all the same movement.
Yeah. But it is. Usually when the rest of my team are here, we try to bring out the something in the book usually.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
We usually
Was
do.
that you during the light and shadow?
Yeah.
I remember.
Oh, that's funny.
So we have some prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as you're working with this, just like keep doing whatever you're doing.
I know.
Just like notice how your body's kind of feeling
Yeah.
in that moment.
Oh,
You're
look,
starting
this
to get
is-
anxious for some reason.
This is
or you're
giving me
tensing
like,
up.
these are like giving me like heebie-jeebies. Like,
Oh, that one?
Maybe
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
getting, yeah.
SpongeBob.
Yeah, but it's like the holes are like.
Mhm.
that make me go. Probably because like when I see holes like this at the beach, it's like there's a critter living on that rock when it looks like.
Doing what you're doing, don't change anything, but just notice like how your body's feeling. Are you getting frustrated? Are you relaxed? Really relaxed, yeah.
Uh-huh, that's pretty cool, actually. The ball felt good when I had
There's
it.
something very meditative work in it, working with you.
It's crazy because it's like, it never really gets more tangible. It's still the same consistency of like, because sometimes there's that air model with clay. It starts off stiff, but the more you play with it, it gets. That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking.
Or even different than like.
Those lines are really different than those lines, right?
Yeah, it just doesn't like, it can just break easy, but it doesn't crump. It's definitely a good one for the 3-year-old class before introducing them.
What happened, I was saying.
We do, 3 to 5. Before December, though, we do enroll the 2.7.
Hang on.
As long as their birthday's before.
Oh.
So in July, we may have some. Have a waiting list already.
That's great.
What do you?
Your
get?
imagination. Your
Yeah.
imagination. My imagination is like.
I wish food would cut that easy. Potato just stick to my knife.
Eliza looking.
Oh, now you can do
Potato
this.
chips. Reading, yeah, it's down the street, it's the preschool one.
Am I ready to touch?
Uh,
I go to school here. Oh, nice, I went to school here back in 2013. And I'm actually graduating from national on May 18th from my master's program.
I know you guys are having so much fun.
We're gonna switch.
We'll switch just for a few minutes.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna keep playing later, I promise.
Okay.
But I do want you guys to get just a sense of what it feels like.
Maybe we can.
Yeah, it's still small, like, we're cute.
I was thinking about that. I want to.
So in a minute, we're gonna switch just for a few minutes, just to give you guys a sense of what the play feels like, because then we're gonna keep playing.
Oh, yeah.
It smells very ashy. I also smell it in it's strange.
Oh, that one.
I like this stuff. Definitely. Have to order some for home and order for some for preschool.
All right, so you can go ahead and switch. It's like very calm in this room right now.
It's very calm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You can put it back. If you leave, like, they're probably gonna, you can leave it, they're probably gonna play with it though, but.
maybe they don't want to. Oh, yeah, she doesn't want to.
Let's just take, maybe a few minutes exploring the second material and then we'll come back together.
Use to.
It's okay, we'll wipe that down.
Yeah, I was like, I think it's the same reason.
Melted.
Kept their shape there.
National, geographic.
That's more like.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
It-
So it feels more like wet sand.
Me.
This is
Yeah.
more for like.
I was definitely like hated having wet sand on my feet. So I did not like that sensation, that feeling on the feet in my hands, I guess. But this sand doesn't stick to it. It's a little different.
So how does this one feel?
Yeah.
It's making it very hard.
Oh, no.
That's the opposite. It just takes a little bit.
I'm relaxed.
Even when I cook, the seasoning salts are.
Yeah, it's maybe he's the client.
All right, we're gonna come back together. just for a few minutes, and then you will go back to play a bit more. So yeah, you guys can put the clay back. Actually, you can just do it on top of that, that's fine. All right, so you guys probably got a sense of like, you know, how the different materials feel, right? And the different ways that you can kind of change the kinetic sand. You know, and all the different ways you can kind of change and mold the modeling clay. What I overheard some of you already starting to think about like how you were feeling, what emotions were kind of coming up as your hands were molding and playing and exploring the material. What was coming up for some of you? Feeling really relaxed? Yeah.
I noticed, for me, I noticed that I was more calmer with the kinetic sand.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to play as rough with it, and that one I was like a little bit more stressed out, but
Mm.
it kept me like I was like, I'm allowed
Yeah.
to like punch this or something.
Yeah. And I love how you did this with your hands, like, and when you were kind of a little anxious in that moment, like, what were your hands doing with the clay?
It was just like,
You were like squeezing it.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
like it transferring the stress to it.
Yeah, and so with the kinetic sand, some of you kind of just let it kind of flow through your hands. It felt a bit more relaxing. Some of you felt relaxed with the modeling clay, but the modeling clay, you can kind of squeeze it a little bit more. Maybe there was maybe, you know, you're not feeling angry in that moment, but maybe you were connecting to that emotion of anger, right? Or frustration as you were kind of squeezing it and working with it in that way. So, yeah, interesting to see how, you know, depending on what you are touching and working with and exploring and how you're exploring it, there's different emotions that you might be connecting to. For everybody and every child, it's gonna be different, right? A lot of you were like, oh, this feels so nice, right? For some children, you know, something to keep in mind when thinking about the materials that you choose, it might not, the kinetic sand might not feel good on their hands, right? So when choosing your material, it might be helpful maybe to have 2 different types of materials, right? Thinking about the different children that are at your sites, right?
I was thinking too, that this stuff right there would be cool with like some pegs and a hammer, just like, cause it keeps it in place, but it's giving them a different concept.
Yeah, and you kind of, it's the pounding motion,
Mhm.
right? Whether it's a hammer or a block, whatever it is, you know, working with the material in that way. You're like, can be connecting to a different emotion, right, with that action. Interesting, yeah, that's a great idea. All right, so now what we're gonna do, we're gonna kind of do the second part here, where we're gonna do some emotion storytelling with the materials that we have. And there's a few different ways that we can do this. So the idea is that we are kind of showing and expressing a specific emotion, maybe that we feel or that we have felt in the past, or an emotion that a character in a book is feeling, right? So there's some connections to literature that can be made. I'm going to say at this table, at the kinetic sand table, we're gonna have some storybooks. And it's 3 different books, and all 3 of these books are in the guide. The first one is My Heart Fills with Happiness. The Goodbye Book, Todd Parr. And When Sophie Gets Angry, really, really angry. These, you know, especially When Sophie Gets Angry, really, really angry, and the Goodbye Book are pretty, are in a lot of preschool classrooms already. And this is also a really beautiful book, just exploring happiness, right? And so for each of these books, there is a bookmark, right, that is attached to the back of the book, right? And so what you can do is you're gonna get the templates of these bookmarks and you can use the ones that we've already created in connection to these books specifically, or you can create your own, right, using the template. And so what you can do is you can create like a little, kind of like a library card, might go in like a little pocket. It's just tape and cardstock. You can, you know, put the bookmark in the little pocket. And you can have this out at the exhibit for caregivers to read. And then there's a little guide for them as they're reading to prompt the kids to, you know, explore or connect some of the emotions that are coming up in the book to the material and what they're doing with the specific material. So there are some prompts here, and they're all mostly the same. You know, how is the child in the story moving? Show me in the sand. How is the child in the story feeling? Show me in the sand. How does the story make you feel? Right? Show me in the sand or in the clay, whatever they're working with. So some questions to think about, or that the adult can ask child as they're reading the book and exploring with the material kind of side by side. So these 3 books with their bookmarks are going to be at the kinetic sand table. So as a group, you can pick one of the books. You can kind of read it together, and you can think about and explore the material with using these questions on the bookmark. So this will be here. And so this last part here is going to be at the modeling clay table. And so what we have here is an emotions chart that you can have out in your exhibit next to the sand or the clay, right? And here the child and the caregiver are essentially using the emotions wheel to think about a time that they felt that way, right? A specific emotion. And then kind of talking, right, about that time they felt happy or sad or whatever it is, you know, angry, and using kind of the material to show that, right? So you should be getting templates for these emotions wheels, and so it's basically just several emotions here. One of them doesn't have the written, the labeled emotion, so there might be some kind of, it's a little open to interpretation, right? You know, how do you think that that face feels? How do you think that face feels, right? And then there's another one that does have the specific emotions on them. So it's not as open to interpretation, right? And so the idea is that these emotions wheel is on this turntable, right? With a pointer, right? And the way that we've done it, we have this pointer and we kind of have the prompt on the pointer. So it's like you spin it, right? And then that prompt for the caregiver is right there. So the prompt is what makes you feel blank, show me in the sand, right? And you might put this on the wheel or right next to the wheel. You can spin it, right? Kind of makes me think of The Price is Right a little bit. Whatever it lands on, I landed on sad, right? So what makes me feel sad, right? Is there something that happened recently in my life that made me feel sad? And I can kind of show that, tell that story through the sand, through the clay, right? You are more than welcome to work together, right? You can create a story together, right? As a group or as a pair. Or you can just work on your own. It's really up to you. Another kind of another version of the emotions wheel that you should be getting the template for as well is just an emotions die, right? Same faces, just on a six-sided die, and you can roll it. That's the emotion that you got. What does it look like to you, right? This one's not labeled, right? Open to interpretation. What does it look like to you? Maybe it's silly, right? Maybe it's something else for somebody else. What is a time that made me feel silly, right? I'm gonna show you in the sand or in the clay, right? So you'll get a chance to kind of play around with that at this table. And you can use the same tools that are already there. Do you all have any questions? No? All right, let's do it. Let's spend maybe a few minutes exploring. Maybe actually since you're gonna be reading at least one of the books, maybe like 10 minutes at each station and then we'll switch. How does that sound? Yeah? Okay.
So is this turntable in the log?
I
saw their arrow.
The turntable, I don't think there's a link for it, but essentially any turntable that's like about the size of your print, right? Should work. So however big you decide to print the motions chart, that's the size of the turntable that you would want to get, right? This is also an option if you don't want to
Yeah, I was
get a
gonna say, I think
turntable
that's
as well,
pretty
so, yeah. Yeah.
I was gonna say we can do each individual spin and make like an emotion story or all through. One of those children. Two rough. For our participants that are joining us virtually, if you can think of any children's titles that you know of that you think would be good with this exhibit, feel free to put them in the chat, share them in the chat. We'd love to hear if you have any titles that you're thinking of or any just ideas.
Oh, yeah. How do you think her body's moving right now?
She's shaking.
She's shaking. I see you squeezing the sand. She's moving like this, right? Yeah. Okay, no. Yes, no, yeah. Yeah. Because I knew earlier, but makes things. Careful that volcanoes explode, so they might.
Exactly.
But we can pretend with our hands.
It makes me feel calm.
Show me with your hands, right? You can, instead of throwing.
I'm like this.
Very.
Careful they don't throw the sand.
I'm just a big.
I think you're having trouble finding like one thing, I'm like, whoa.
Feels like defeated.
So she feels defeated and she's probably moving a lot slower.
Okay,
Show me in the sand.
Look that, like that, how it's moving. How it's moving, yeah, how it's moving.
I haven't.
Yeah.
Look at,
Yeah.
breaking apart.
I would think my immediate reaction is to kind of use my fingers to kind
Yeah.
of little by
Like quicksand.
Yeah.
Like, once you get it.
Yeah. She's going like this, right?
Angry and then
she hears the birds. Yeah.
She comes to the old beech tree and she comes. Hoping she's better now, she climbs. The house is one. Separately. Talk about that.
How do you think she feels now at the end of the story?
You see that the sister ignored the it's just before that. Kids don't know that. They react like.
Are you good?
That in that moment.
So what comforts you when you are angry? Yeah. Show me in the snap. I just added that. What comforts you? What in?
How would you show breathing?
I just added that.
No, I know, but I.
Oh, there's creative ways, whatever,
There's
you know,
no- yeah.
there's no.
They use this stuff in the beginning.
When I think of breathing, I think of like that rhythmic,
Yes.
or like rhythmic sensation and
Pottery, but it looks so.
my lungs opening.
It does look good.
I agree.
I'm kids, including myself. When I feel sad,
The way to my chicken.
I like putting a blanket on.
Do stuff like that.
Like that sense of that that weight on my body, the sense of being wrapped, right? Kind of calms my body down. So I'm like, I'm showing you in the same feeling by doing your emotion right now. My body, my body.
I actually,
There's no right answer here. Yeah, every kid's gonna come up with their own way to express themselves.
Like the water.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the water too, so that you can also use some of the tools too, to kind of show maybe the water or something else, right? Switch. All right, we are gonna go ahead and just switch, just so that you guys, I know. Are you guys telling a story? Do you need a few more seconds?
we were about to.
Okay.
Okay.
Why don't you take 30 more seconds to finish up your story?
Oh, spider.
They're telling their story.
I mean, you can tell what I'm thinking, it comes me. Yes, the night sky.
There's good spiders.
Or octopus.
First, I can believe it. I can believe it.
Maybe something that maybe balance.
Everybody's hard to. That makes me angry too sometimes. All right, we're ready.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna switch for a few minutes and then we'll come back together.
I've never like really like.
Did we do some nights?
Oh, I'm scared.
Stop.
My heart feels it.
Ladies first.
I feel happiness when I see the faces. I mean, is this? I smell it.
I was scared. Well, I saw the view. So the view was like.
That is a vocabulary.
I see.
Wonder what culture they eat.
But I was kind of ignoring.
My heart fills with happiness.
But at the same time, I was like, okay, I see green, I see green, like, I was trying to.
I walk barefoot on the grass.
And I
dance. My heart fills with happiness when I hold her.
No, I know.
I have stories. What fills your heart?
I will say.
This book.
It's one of the. It comes to like.
So what were some of the ways that she was moving her body as her heart was filled with happiness? And like, how can you show that movement in the sand?
Like swings, dancing.
And I kind of see your hands going like this, right? Yeah.
Make footprints in the sand.
Mhm.
How would you do this?
Dancing.
When I think of her walking through the sand, I kind of want to do this, right? Make little footprints in the sand, or maybe she's dancing, right? Yeah, you can. Like this, right?
The legs.
But that's my initial instinct,
Mhm.
right?
How is the child? Sorry.
For silly, no? What about this one?
Sorry, but is the.
Because how is the child restored? What is the concept of each one? So one is how is the child? Next one is how is the child story go? And then the last one is how does the story mean? Can I hear in like 2 minutes? Does that sound good? Okay, like 2 more minutes, does that sound good? Sad.
Well, to me. So you're asking me.
Yes, what makes you feel sad?
I think when I ever
Okay.
feel like.
Thank
Stop, just kidding. When I saw my kids at school, and I had to say
I know you're good.
bye. It's
Like school.
only like 5 minutes.
I know, but like.
We talked about, we usually, single day, we kind of do. Every single day, so we took turns. Like then. Because they see kids playing and then. Like from the laptop.
Just like this movie. All grades.
Yeah. I was thinking, it's my little.
All right, so we're gonna come back together. So why don't you take a few seconds to just finish up whatever it is that you're working on.
I am gonna be I'm just thinking.
Cause I thought he was like.
To the beach.
This one else.
My arm just fell.
I mean, what does that fill your heart with?
Yes.
So if you guys.
No.
It's just one.
I was also trying to picture I was gonna do like a picture.
Alright,
of
when you're ready, you can-
a picture with my parents, kind of brought me memories of when I was younger, and spent time with them. And then even I was gonna do a sun, because the sunshine. It's like a heart of the landscape. This is the name I Does my wisdom spray? She's dancing.
Yeah, there's a restroom. If you walk out these doors right on the right, if you want to go wash your hands, and then once you come back, we can take a look at the last few pages together.
It's bothering me.
There's also a kitchen, and you just walk straight down. Yep, I'm gonna go wash your hands over there. We lost everyone.
Any questions from our virtual participants? I saw a few folks put some titles in the chat. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, we were done. Okay.
Our in-person folks are washing their hands. Just something you might think about in your setup, like having the sensory stand table close to a first. People can wash their hands. Outside.
I think that's because another thing of being financial people, whenever there's a new those social media, social network. Like the shows. I don't think of it. It's thankful. That's a function.
I'm here. Fun. While we wait for the last few folks to come back, what, was there anything coming up while you guys were exploring the books or exploring the emotions wheel? In terms of like how you were connecting the material to either your emotions or emotions in the books?
And also to others around me. It was nice to hear what they had to say and connected like things about how I feel with their emotions too.
Yeah, this doesn't have to be a solitary, an individual play experience, right? You all can create stories together, right? Create your own stories. You can connect to somebody else's story, right? It can be very much a collaborative experience, right? Not just between caregiver and child, but between families, right? Between many children or many adults and children, right? Anything else coming up?
Let me say something, but.
Yeah,
I mean,
take a moment.
I don't know if you guys mentioned it. I really love the connection to the emotion.
Mhm.
And having the books
Mhm.
and the questions that are prompted already,
Mhm.
very practical,
Mhm.
thinking on the way, we work with family childcare providers.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see this, being another hit, meaning like if they can use this with the school age.
Yeah.
kids A lot,
Yeah.
talking about emotions in a way that is very fun, but at the same time addressing,
Mm-hmm.
bottom line. So I really like that.
Yeah, and the books are a really great way to involve the adult, right? So a lot of times if there's play materials, the adult might just stand back and let the child play on their own, but like the books are a really important part of this exhibit, right? Of ways to learn about emotions of others, of other characters, and read stories that involve a lot of emotions, right? That are really rich in that. And the children need the adult to read it to them. So it really encourages the adult to be there with them, right? Yeah, the list of these books are all in the guide, but if there's other books that you can think of, like the exhibit is not designed around these specific titles. These are just examples, right? So feel free to find your own books, and kind of think about how, what prompts you might use to connect that specific book to the material, or the material to that specific book, right? Before we kind of look at the list of the resources and the prints, I'd love to invite Eli. Eli, if you want to just touch and share a little bit about some ways to kind of integrate a little bit more technology to this exhibit. There you are.
Yeah, hey, totally. For sure. Yeah, so what I love about this exhibit is it's so tactile, so tangible, so easy to do in a very low-tech way. And yet it also offers a lot of opportunity for expanding into kind of a technologically mediated, augmented, integrated way. Whatever is accessible, there's a lot of different options and kind of pathways for exploration. So one of the more common ones that I've seen a lot at different kind of interactive museums, learning museums, is the augmented reality kind of projected sand surface. So they are using Connect, which is a device that kind of allows you to read the depths of whatever it's looking at. So you can kind of project different surfaces onto the sand tray. There's a lot of really helpful DIY instructions available online. If that's something that folks are wanting to explore, there are definitely resources available. Another couple options are playing with, coming back to a previous exhibit with light and shadow. There's a lot of opportunity here for integrating light and shadow into sand play. Building ridges and crests into the sand provides a lot of opportunities for then using different light sources to make a dramatic landscape or sort of augment storytelling. We're also working with different kind of textured objects, to use the textured objects to kind of roll textures onto the sand. And you can then attach something like, a speaker to that object. So it both gives a texture and gives kind of a sonic quality to that. Lots of opportunities there. Another one that I personally feel really excited about, we didn't have the opportunity to implement it this time, but using another form of computer vision. So something that, might work from the webcam on your phone or from a laptop, to look at the colors that are in the sand tray. And then you can, map the colors that are shown in the sand tray to sounds or to other lights elsewhere. And so you kind of have this like sensory modality relationship. All of that can become possible with technology. But again, none of it's necessary, right? We've had, we just had a really wonderful experience without any wires or cameras. Well, I guess there are some cameras because we're all remote, but wires kind of tangling us up. So these are just options, invitations for further exploration.
Thank you, Eli. So that information is also in the guide in the technology integration page there on page 9. And just the last few pages, just like the other guides that we've done, again, our literature connections, are there as well. And then a list of some resources with some links that are, on pages 12 and 13. So these molding materials, these are all the materials that Elin spoke about earlier. And those are some links to some examples, right? There are a lot of different versions of those out there, but those are just some examples. And then in the Google Drive, you should also have access to these templates. And those links are there as well. The links in the guide also include links to this pointer that we 3D printed it, right? So those links could provide some instructions if you do have a 3D printer on how you might print this specific pointer out. You do not need a 3D printer to create a pointer though. You could actually literally just use tape and make an arrow on the table that will point to the emotions. But different ways of doing it, right? And yeah, and before we kind of talk about that last slide there, a lot of information. Are there any questions about materials, setup, books, anything? Technology, integration?
I'm quite there yet.
And for those remote, for those who are remote, you can also unmute yourself if you have a question. Or type it in the chat. All right. All right, well then, that takes me to our last slide here of just a reminder with this exhibit as well as the other exhibits with the Wintu and Light and Shadow, we invite you to post photos, to post comments or anecdotes of things you've observed on our Padlet. We'd love to see how you guys are implementing these exhibits and if you've adapted them in a certain type of way that is a little different than how it was in the guide. We'd love to see that as well. So don't forget about that. And then as always, if you need any support and you want to sign up for just a coaching session with someone from Ames team to talk about any of these exhibits, to think through them, we are here for that as well. So the link is on there and in the guide as well. Yeah.
Do you guys have an email contact that I can directly email and invite you to Reading and Beyond open house that we'll be having this May?
Yeah, I mean.
We're planning on utilizing the wind exhibit.
The Wintu? Yeah.
Wintu.
What do we think? Should we, I mean, email, you can email any of us, maybe.
Just an invitation.
Yeah, I can give you my email, but I don't.
Perfect, when you email the
Yeah, I can
certificate.
share.
There we go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I will be
Great.
sharing the flyer with you guys. You guys are welcome to join.
Thank you, that's exciting.
Our neighbors.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right.
Access to the tablet
But I can go.
on the website, or is it?
Here.
Is it?